Ever watched a movie trailer that spoils the ending before the film even starts? Imagine the New Testament doing the same thing, writing a future prophecy after the disaster it claims to predict had already happened. In today's episode, we'll pull apart Matthew chapter 24, the so-called Olivet Discourse, and show how the whole second coming forecast was likely cobbled together post 70 AD when Jerusalem's temple lay in rubble. Stick around because the evidence will make you question every end-time sermon you've ever heard. And it'll also make you wonder how many other biblical prophecies were actually after-the-fact rewrites. Welcome to Secular Strike Back. This is Toothless Grin Kim. If you caught my last video, you already know why the book of Revelation is best read as a coded protest against Emperor Nero, not a literal roadmap to the apocalypse. We unpacked the beastly 666, which was Nero's Hebrew gematria, the four horsemen as Roman legions, the Whore of Babylon as Rome itself, and even Gog and Magog as political scapegoats of the first century. Now we're moving on to Matthew chapter 24, which sounds like the next chapter in that same clandestine anti-Roman pamphlet, but this time the focus shifts from Nero's tyranny to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 AD. The claim? Jesus predicted the world's end from the Mount of Olives. The reality? The event he supposedly foresees had already been crushed under Roman siege. The years 30 to 33 AD was the supposed crucifixion and reported resurrection of Jesus, though we atheists know better, the original Jesus story. In 40 to 50 AD was the composition of Mark, the earliest gospel, which provides the narrative backbone for Matthew. And in 70 AD, Roman legions under Titus, shortly after the death of Nero, destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, which is the catechism that Matthew chapter 24 describes as future. And sometime during the years 75 to 85 AD is when many scholars believe the book of Matthew was written. As far as who wrote the book of Matthew, they believe it was written in Antioch by a Greek-speaking Jewish community, the post-temple community that needed a theological explanation. If Matthew was really composed after the year 70 AD, the signs of the end are not prophetic. They are post-event commentary. The author is retrofitting Jesus' words to make sense of a tragedy that had already shattered the Jewish world. So why Antioch? This bustling port city was a melting pot of Hellenistic culture, Jewish diaspora, and early Christian evangelism. Its community spoke Greek, read the Septuagint, and was keenly aware of Roman politics. The book of Mark as a source? Matthew lifts roughly 90% of the book of Mark's material, reordering, expanding, and sometimes updating it. Cultural pressures. After the temple's fall, Jews and nascent Christians faced identity crisis. A text that portrayed Jesus as a Messiah who had already fulfilled Israel's hopes, including the destruction of the temple, helped preserve the movement. So Matthew isn't a neutral chronicle. It's a theological PR campaign for a community desperately trying to stay afloat. The "you will hear of wars and rumors of wars" line appears in Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 and 7. where it states, "You will hear of wars." And the beginning of birth pains in Mark chapter 13, verses 7 through 8, it states, "Nation will rise against nation, and there will be earthquakes." And in the book of Luke chapter 21, verses 9 through 10, it states, "There will be distress among the nations, and great signs in the heavens." All three are synchronized to sound like universal warning signs, yet none of them pin down a specific date. They're deliberately vague, mirroring the prophetic genre of the Second Temple period. By echoing each other, the authors create a tri-gospel consensus that looks authoritative, exactly the kind of literary reinforcement a post-temple community would crave. Jesus, or in this case the gospel writer, calls wars, famines, and earthquakes birth pains, depending on which version of the Bible you use. This metaphor is timeless. Ancient Near Eastern literature used birth pains, the words birth pains, to describe periods of social upheaval. Modern news cycles still use the phrase whenever a recession hits. If the author wanted a real prediction, why not give a date or a geographic marker? The vague metaphor works perfectly for any era, including the chaotic first-century Judea that just witnessed the temple's destruction. When you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it ought not to be, flee the city, as stated in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. The phrase originates in the book of Daniel in chapters 9, 11, and 12, and referred to a defiling sacrilege in the temple. Most scholars agree it pointed to Antiochus IV Epiphanes' altar to Zeus in 167 BC. The 70 AD context, when the Romans set fire to the temple, they didn't leave a pagan altar. They left ruins. Yet early Christians could reinterpret the ruined stone as the abomination that made the temple desolate. By reappropriating Daniel's code, Matthew's author, the book of Matthew's author, could claim that Jesus had foreseen the exact catastrophe that just occurred, therefore validating Jesus' messianic status for skeptical believers. Matthew chapter 24, verse 5 says, "Many will come in my name, claiming to be the Messiah." This is nothing more than a sociological observation. Charismatic leaders generate followers. Let's think of Elvis impersonators, modern pop culture cults, or political demagogues. Early Christians saw James the Just, Simon the Zealot, and other Messiah claimants emerging after Jesus' death. The verse functions as a warning to keep the community tight-knit, not as a prophetic stamp announcing an apocalyptic showdown. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 9, it says, "You will be handed over to be persecuted and killed." The original audience lived under Roman military rule in Judea and the surrounding provinces. All the nations, for them, meant the already known Mediterranean world. That's all they knew, so they called them nations. That's all they knew. So those were the nations. They didn't know there's a whole global world out there. All they knew was the Mediterranean world. So so all nations, as they specified, for them meant the already known Mediterranean world, the imperial threat, not the modern globalized notion of nation and states. The martyrdom of James in 44 AD Peter in 64 AD, and later Paul in 67 AD, was already at real danger, as the book was written after 70 AD. The author's warning is a practical heads-up for his peers, not a timeless prophecy of a future global anti-Christian crusade. When contemporary believers hear wars, famines, earthquakes, they instantly picture the rapture or Armageddon. Two key missteps cause this. Anachronistic projection. Projecting today's global awareness onto a first-century worldview that only knew the Mediterranean basin. The second is ignoring the historical anchor, forgetting that the end of the age originally meant the collapse of the Roman Jewish order, not the termination of creation. Understanding the original meaning strips away the apocalyptic veneer. Matthew chapter 24 is a post-event reinterpretation. What does that mean for us? Discern charismatic voices. Just as early Christians were warned about false messiahs, today's prophetic leaders, politicians, influencers, televangelists, often ride the same wave. See turmoil as a transition. Wars, climate crisis, and social unrest are always birth pains. They signal that a new order may be on the horizon. Live purposely. Knowing the prophecy is fabricated frees us from fatalistic dread. It empowers us to shape the future rather than wait for a pre-written apocalypse. In short, the next time you hear the signs are all around us, remember, the signs were written after the fact. And the real power lies in how we respond today. So if you're still with me, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. The algorithm loves a channel that tackles biblical myths with hard-won evidence. Comment below. Do you think Matthew chapter 24 was a genuine prophecy or a clever post-70 AD rewrite? Share this video with anyone who's stuck on the end times treadmill. Maybe they'll finally see the treadmill for what it is. Your engagement fuels the next episode, where we'll dissect the book of Daniel and its four kingdoms theory. Spoiler! It's also more about Roman politics than extraterrestrials. So there you have it. A post-70 AD community, a devastated temple, and a gospel writer who turned tragedy into future prophecy to keep his fledgling faith alive. The next time a preacher points to Matthew chapter 24 as a literal timetable for the second coming, you can smile, nod, and say, "Nice try," but the timeline was already written in stone, and that stone is now dust. Stay skeptical, stay curious, and keep questioning the stories that claim to know the future. Finally, if you enjoy Secular Strike Back and you live in the United States and would like to support it, please consider making a $3 monthly donation by going to my Patreon and becoming a member. The link is in the description below. And again, please be sure to like this video, share it with anyone you can, and subscribe to the Secular Strike Back's YouTube channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a comment. It all helps the algorithm promote my videos to a bigger audience, and I could always use more friends. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.